Hi, welcome to the lecture on EnvAdapt72 and animals. Now, during the next videos, we will focus on the kidney's role on the water balance regulation. And over here we have two small mammals. On the right-hand side, there is this famous kangaroo rat. And both these animals are living in the desert, so they can't have some huge amount of water to drink. But there's always, all the time, small amount of water replacement. And it depends on different animals, the water replacement rate might vary. In humans, it might be 7%, but in some cases, mammals are replacing 35% of the water every day. And that means that, okay, they are replacing all the water twice in a week. Okay, what are the roads of the water loss? First of all, we have discussing on the evaporation. And that's not happening much in the mammals because we have waterproof skin. But of course we have sweating, so there might be some water loss from here. Then we have respiration. And of course that will cause that, okay, there is water loss. And we can cool down the air that is coming from the lungs, and with that we can reduce the water loss, but anyway there will be some water loss. But we can't regulate it. Otherwise we have to regulate how much we are breathing, or are we breathing or not. But what we can regulate, well, we can regulate the other end. So what happens in the feces? What happens in the urine? So how much water we are releasing there? Okay, so what is the role of the kidney? And what we have there in the urine? So first of all, it's a tube outside. It's a cavity to environment, so we can get waste products. So it's doing the same thing as in the feces, for example. Then the other thing, what we are having, we have secretion. We have a secreting water and everything that exists in the water. And then we can eliminate all the water-soluble small molecules. If we have, for example, toxins, etc., we can eliminate them. And then the third thing is that, okay, we are regulating. We are regulating the composition of the urine. So what kind of ions, molecules we have there. And also on the volume. So how much water we have there. And I think you all been learning that, okay, what we are doing in the kidneys, we are using it for the nitrogen waste, to get rid of it. But at the same time, we are releasing a lot of different kind of ions, for example. This is a typical composition of human urine. So the largest molecule group is those that are containing nitrogen. So in these we have on these we have different all kind of nitrogen containing molecules, like the urea, like the and everything else. But then on these bulk ions like chloride and sodium and potassium, we are also releasing quite a lot of them. Then smaller amounts of phosphate and sulfate and calcium and magnesium. So they are common, but they are not as common as the sodium or potassium. And therefore we can regulate that, okay, what kind of ions, for example, we are excreting, etc. And in some cases we are regulating them quite drastically. That, okay, for example, on the calcium concentration, we want to have just a certain amount of calcium in the blood. Okay, how these kidneys are working, they are working with the nephrons. And the general form of the nephron is that, okay, in the one end we have a Bowman capsule. So, okay, and over here we have the filter. And in the end we are then getting on the pee, on the urine. And there's a filter in one end, so we are producing primary urine. We are actually producing in humans maybe 150 liters per day. Then in the definitive urine, there might be 1 liter per day. So 149 liters we are reabsorption. So we are getting back to our body. And how this filter is working is that, okay, we have a glomerulus that is in the Bowman capsule. So we have afferent vessel, we have efferent vessel, so the blood is flowing in, blood is flowing out. And then it makes these turns there. And these vessels are actually quite large, so that's why we are filtering huge amount of blood all the time. And the idea is that, okay, we have the endothelial wall, and between these endothelial cells we have small gaps. So water and all kind of small water-soluble molecules are flowing through to this lumen. So this to form this capsular fluid. And from there they are then flowing in the Nephron Tubule. And if we take a closer look, so here we have endothelial cell. They are a little bit different than in other parts of our circulation. So they are easier to get, for example, water and small molecules to pass through. And how this filtering is happening. So we have the blood flow. This is a little bit a larger blood flow than in the normal capillaries. And it's filtered between these gaps in the epithelial cells. And the sieving is limiting the flow of those large molecules. No, but small molecules are flowing because the water is flowing. And because the water is flowing, then it depends on the pressure of water, pressure of blood. So therefore the blood pressure is pushing now the water from the blood to this capsular fluid. But when you are taking water, ions, etc., away from the blood, because you have proteins, etc. there. So therefore, this blood becomes a little bit hyperosmotic. And that causes that now this colloidal osmotic pressure, because there's more water, so it's more diluted than in the blood, so it tries to push water back. And therefore, and also it's when we have the capsular fluid with water or any other, it will stretch these walls. So therefore we have this hydrostatic pressure. And you can see that actually this osmotic pressure is quite high. So the sum of these is about 5. So there's only 1 kilopascal pressure to filter the water and ions and all other things away. And therefore, if we are regulating the blood pressure, if it's lower, then filtering is not happening, or it's happening with very slowly process. And that's have clinical consequences that, okay, in people with cardiac diseases, they usually have also problems with their kidneys. But also, we can use this that, okay, in some cases, the animals are lowering the blood pressure to close down the kidneys. The other thing is that, okay, if you are closing this blood vessel here, there's no blood flow, and therefore the number of active nephrons is decreased, because we have thousands or millions of nephrons, and if we are reducing the number of these, then we are reducing the filtering, and therefore we are really reducing the amount of water loss. But of course, this is just the beginning of the filtering phase. But let's look that, okay, when it's going in the tube, we are moving ions, and sometimes the ions are moving actively, sometimes they are moving passively, so with active transportation, with the diffusion. And the interesting thing is that, okay, we also have the water, and they are related to each other. So first of all, we have the active transportation. So we are using ATP to move certain molecules inside this solution. And of course, that means that, okay, now the concentration is higher, and that means that this osmotic pressure is higher. And that means that now the water wants to go inside. And when you are having more water, that means that, okay, now this concentration is reduced. And then this tube is more diluted, which causes that now some other molecules might be flowing inside. So therefore we have different kind of ions, and we can use the ion pumping of one molecule type to facilitate the diffusion of other molecules. And in this slide we have the same thing in a different form. So there's first the active transportation, and then the flow of water, and then the diffusion of the solute. Thank you.